This is the way of Edan. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I will be talking about The Way of Edan by Philip Chase, which just recently came out and is Dr. Philip Chase's first novel. I assume most of you know him from BookTube. I always joke, I'm like, oh, this little BookTuber now. Pretty well known in BookTube and just really, really knowledgeable and great guy, so I was really excited to read his book and see what it was going to be. And there's a lot of things here that I feel like made sense, but there were also a lot of things that kind of surprised me and are not quite what I expected them to be with his book, and so we're going to jump in and talk about it. So The Way of Edan is set up as to a somewhat kind of familiar base or archetype for a classic fantasy story. We've got our main character who seems to be kind of the chosen one, blessed with great power as well, and then we have the Way of Edan, which is a really powerful church group. And they're looking to kind of take over and basically conquer everybody and all have forced them to be under Edan, as well as we have some other groups and parties that are involved in politicking, including people who are against the way or people who are for it but in their own way, and kind of set up in a lot of that way. It's a high fantasy world that does have some things reminiscent of mythology in our world as well, and we have a world where there's some different creatures that are interesting, as well as we have dwarves under a different name. We have elves, which are very mystical and dangerous kind of thing. And so things, once again, that you'll see in some types of like Norse and other European mythology here as well. And the things that surprised me is, while this is not like crazy dark, the tone and some of it, like the language use, I wasn't quite expecting. It doesn't really go, like I said, it's especially in the age where there's so many people writing grimdark. This is most certainly not that. But a couple of those things surprised me a little bit with where it is, but it makes it feel very real. I will say with the prose here, it did take me a little bit to get used to, because when I first started this, the prose, it took a little bit, like a chapter or two for me to really like feel it, and then once I did, I quite enjoyed it. It definitely feels almost lyrical at points, and there's certain phrases, the way things are described, or when people are talking or given to a moment of introspection, there's some really deep and great lines there and thought about it. And it's one of the things that makes this interesting because while this does feel reminiscent of some other classic fantasy tropes and types of things that we've seen, it's coming at it from a little bit of a different direction and really kind of looking at a deeper kind of meaning behind the things that are happening in some ways as well. And the magic itself allows you to kind of sense other people's emotions, among many other things, and so kind of like understand that, and so that empathy that then is given for that gives a really interesting look when people are using the magic. It allows them to kind of like be outside of themselves and really observe things keenly. And so it's an interesting way to do it, where you see somebody who really can see and feel what others are going through and how that informs their characters' decisions, which reminded me a bit, the only other place I've seen it where it's something, a kind of similar conceit, is Janie Wirt's Wars of Light and Shadow, where we have a character in there who it has a kind of magical type of empathy. It's pretty different, but is kind of what that made me think of with that. Now, the thing I do want to say with the politics and the church and all that is it does do some great things with the political scheming, because although we've got these different factions, but we also have factions within factions, which I liked. There's a lot of books you'll see too where it does the thing where it's like, the church wanting to go on crusades, have everybody under them, and it's either it's zealots who are doing it, or it's people who secretly want power, or there's others as well, but it's usually just kind of like this one front. And here we actually have several different people. We've got people in the leadership here who are true zealots and truly believe in what they're doing. You have others who really are just seeking power, and you have others who don't actually agree with the actions being going on, but for their own reasons, they specifically have reasons why they are still okay with this, or things they disagree, and kind of the plots within plots. And so the politics here, I thought, were one of the most interesting things as you go through and you see the different people and different kingdoms, and just different groups who are all scheming and going in, as well as the main area we're focusing on. It's a lot of people scheming against each other, even though they're ostensibly on the same side. So that part was really interesting. The thing I will say here is, this is a debut, and so I'm sure there's going to be a lot more coming, but this book for me didn't quite do enough to differentiate itself from the pack just with initially. It did some things that I really enjoy, but the story itself is like I said, a fairly simple premise, and one, we've definitely seen, and I'm really interested to see where it goes, because there's a few things toward the end especially that are being set up, and so it's still something that I enjoyed, but at least for the first book, I'm definitely not like just blown away at this point, even though it was a really solid book that I enjoyed. And I'm looking forward to seeing if books 2 and 3 then help to kind of differentiate it, get it out and a little bit more unique. And there's nothing wrong with using familiar tropes or kind of basis to a story. There's a ton of fantasy like that, and a lot of it I do enjoy it, and I enjoyed this. But I'm looking for something just a little bit more to like have it stand out a bit and go along with the very strong narrative voice of Philip Chase. And that's what I want to say here is, as an author, the authorial voice here is very strong. And I think that's what really pulled me in here is the storytelling, the way that it's written, and then the just different plots and the different types of plots and different types of characters is what really pulled me through and had me very invested in this. Even though the story is something that, I've definitely seen similar things to before, which I think is intentional. This feels like it's supposed to be. And I mean, if you look at the blurbs, I feel like are actually surprisingly accurate for this. Because we have Mark Lawrence on the front cover here, a novel born for love of the story. And then the back part saying equal parts epic and lament. The Way of Edan is the lyrical opening of the Edan trilogy. And agree with that, with kind of the way that it's written, the way storytelling is here, and that it's kind of like appreciating this type of story and doing a different take on it. And so I'm interested to see where this one goes. I feel like it, for a debut, it did a really good job. It was a strong opening, and I'm just looking for a little bit more in books 2 and 3, which I definitely hope to see, and I will absolutely be checking out when they come out. So those really are my thoughts on The Way of Edan by Philip Chase. Let me know if you've read this or if you're excited to read it too. I know I was really looking forward to it. I was tempted to do the audio, but when I found out the audio was going to be a ways down the line, I'm like, nah, I'm going to read it now because I want to read it now. And so I ended up jumping on it sooner, but interested to hear your thoughts if you have read this one. Also, make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link in the description, as always, for the Wizard Lead to a Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, any books, really anything at all. It is a lot of fun and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.